Welcome to Stoked with Megan McPhail, the podcast that helps you get super effing jazzed about your work, life, and bank account. I'm your host, Megan McPhail, a former burnt-out emergency veterinarian that quit my hard-earned career to become a seven-figure business coach, entrepreneur, and elopement photographer. Now I'm living a life I absolutely love, full of travel, adventure, and financial abundance, and I am hell-bent on inspiring others to do the same. Are you ready to say goodbye to the 9-to-5 grind and start going after some big, bold dreams? Then let's dive into this week's episode. Hey, it's your host, Megan McPhail.
And your co-host, Todd Reedy.
And I'm super excited to dive into this week's topic because it popped up in the Elopement Photographer Mastermind. We talked about it a lot on a group coaching call and in our Slack group. And it is the fear of success, which I don't think people talk about enough. Everyone thinks like if you have a fear of failure, that makes sense, right? But a lot of people have a fear of success. Even I do. So I'm really excited to explain this better and kind of go through how to recognize if you're struggling with the fear of success and how to just kind of change your mindset about it and to keep moving forward on all of your goals. So yeah, have you ever had a fear of success?
I have, but I don't think I labeled it like that or like acknowledged that that was what it really was.
Okay.
I think anytime we like do something new, and I'm kind of putting it in general sense, but when I like switched my first career, my engineering career to videography and kind of this more freelance entrepreneur path, because it's such a big change in identity and how other people see you, how I see myself. And so, yeah, I was afraid to be successful in something brand new that wasn't part of my identity.
Yeah, and you'd think you'd be mostly afraid of failure and that it doesn't work out, but people are equally afraid of if it all does work out, Like they're afraid, like, oh my gosh, if people book me for these things, then I have to deliver a service and I have to do it well. And that's terrifying. So I want to go into more of the psychological phenomenon of the fear of success, because basically it's when people experience anxiety, apprehension, or discomfort in response to the possibility of achieving their goals or attaining a level of success that makes them uncomfortable. I mean, we talk all the time about fear of failure and how people might be afraid to move forward in their business because it might not go somewhere, it might flop, it might bomb. And obviously there's a lot to unpack there, but people are equally terrified of everything working out in their favor. So let's talk about the psychology underneath it, because there's a lot going on. I had to research a bunch of this because even though I know I'm kind of experiencing the fear of success right now with some of my coaching offerings and stuff like that, and I know a lot of my coaching students are experiencing it, I wanted to figure out what the heck is causing this. The psychology behind it is really interesting and makes total sense when you start breaking it down. So for some, self-worth issues kind of surface, like maybe they were never a great student or their parents talked down to them and didn't think they would amount to anything. And they just don't have the self-worth where they feel like they deserve the success. They feel like their achievements or what they want doesn't really line up with their identity, which is super interesting. And I'm sure that's the case for so many people. I mean, I was always a straight A student, graduated, on the dean's list. I was top of my class in vet school, but there's a lot of people who would be great entrepreneurs that don't have that history, and they might second guess their self-worth a lot. Another part is fear of change, which also makes total sense because there's going to be a change maybe in your lifestyle, but definitely in your responsibilities and expectations. If you successfully create a business and start booking people, whether you're an elopement photographer or a coach or whatever other business you want to have, there's a level of discomfort with that change. And it's way easier just to ride in your comfort zone, right? And kind of do the things you've always done. But again, nothing cool happens in your comfort zone, but still a lot of people are afraid of change and are afraid of getting uncomfortable. So that's part of it. Another part is imposter syndrome, which is imposter syndrome is lurking behind the scenes of everything we do as entrepreneurs. It just pops up all the time. Pretty much anytime I do a podcast, about something that we need to work through, imposter syndrome is part of that. So imposter syndrome is that feeling of like a fraud, or that your success is undeserved, or that you don't really know what you're doing. And I did a whole podcast episode on how imposter syndrome is actually a superpower, and that feeling of discomfort is what keeps pushing you to get better and better and better and better. So don't let imposter syndrome hold you back. There's also a fear of disapproval. So as you get more successful, there's kind of more eyes on you, and people don't like feeling vulnerable like that. They don't like all the visibility. They're worried they might attract criticism or jealousy. I mean, the internet's an awful place, right? Like a negative comment on an Instagram post or a negative review could just like change your whole outlook and make you want to burn everything down. Luckily, I haven't really ever gotten negative comments from anybody. I mean, if anybody doesn't like me, I don't know about it. They aren't like vocal about it, but sometimes you got to push through that to accomplish your goals, right? And like you are going to have to be a little bit more visible and vulnerable to accomplish your goals. And it's actually kind of cool to build a community for yourself. And then there's also a fear of loss, where people equate success to a lot of hard work, and they're afraid that if they become successful, then they're going to lose time. They're going to lose relationships with people that don't approve of their success or something. They're going to lose some of their personal interests because they're always going to be working. So there's also a fear involved with like the loss that's going to come with success. But for me, having more success normally just means more money, more freedom, because we all get to like define our version of success. So I haven't really lost anything by becoming more successful. I've just gained more of what I want my life to be. So a summary of like the psychology behind the fear of success is, self-worth issues, fear of change, and having to get out of your comfort zone, that freaking imposter syndrome, fear of expectations and visibility, fear of disapproval, and fear of loss. So yeah, it totally makes sense that people would have a fear of success. What do you think about that, Todd?
It makes sense, but also at the same time, like people that become entrepreneurs are usually like self-motivated, self-driven. And so you'd think going into kind of this career path, regardless of what type of entrepreneur or what business you run, you want to do it to be successful.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going towards that goal, or you're wanting to pursue success. But then at the same time, that same thing you're pursuing is what's kind of holding you back too. So it's like this like double-edged sword.
Yeah. And I feel like, because you have like this confused look on your face with trying to explain it. And it makes so much sense that you have that look on your face. Because as I was talking to like members of the Elopement Photographer Mastermind, they're like desperate to get bookings and to make money and for their business to work. But they're also freaking terrified. And it really truly is a weird place to be in, because they want to make a return on their investment. They know they have work to do. So a lot of people who have a fear of success will procrastinate. They will refuse help. They will focus on distractions. They will just not do the work and not take the actions they need and that they know they need to do. And I have a few members who are like, yeah, I haven't done anything in a few months because I'm just terrified. And I know I need to do these things and I know they're going to help my business, but I am terrified of success. And so you get stuck in that spot. And that's why coaching is so cool, because I can help them get over that really scary hump. Yeah, it's weird. It's a weird dichotomy where you want something so bad and you want your business to work and you want your goal life, and you're terrified of the same thing. And I read somewhere, and I've said this a lot lately, that fear and excitement are two sides of the same coin. So it makes sense that you would feel both of those things as you're pursuing your dreams. But so many people, I could see why they'd get stuck here, because they wouldn't know what to do with themselves. So let's talk about, like, as you're listening to this podcast, you're like, oh my God, I'm self-sabotaging myself. I am avoiding the work that needs to be done. I'm procrastinating. I'm focusing on less important things. And I'm like, really have a fear of success. So like, what do you do? The first step is to realize that it's happening to you. And the second step is really to realign your beliefs and kind of like write down Of the things that I just talked about, what are the things holding you back? Is it your imposter syndrome? Is it getting out of your comfort zone? Is it the vulnerability and the visibility? Is it the expectations? And then how can you shift those beliefs, and how can you rewrite your brain to think differently about these things? A lot of people in my mastermind are afraid to charge $5,000 for an elopement because then they think they have to provide a client experience that's just like so above and beyond. And they kind of stop working on things. But then my lesson 6 is all about how to provide an amazing client experience. So maybe go fix up your client experience, make sure that you have a workflow. You're going to send gifts, you're going to send automated emails at this point and that point, so that you can make sure that that's not going to hold you back anymore. This worry that you're not going to be able to perform up to the expectations of your couples or something. So basically identifying what's holding you back and trying to flip the script, either with just your thoughts or start working on things where you can't use that as an excuse anymore. Does that make sense to you, Todd?
It does, yeah. I like the idea of kind of writing out and visualizing what the next steps are of that success, right? And as you're talking, I'm thinking about kind of this yin and yang of success / failure. So you could write all the great things about what you're planning to do to be successful, but it's also probably good. And I've heard of different exercises that, instead of necessarily always writing your goals, writing some things that you're afraid of. And so that may be part of writing or thinking about what the success will look like is, if you are successful, then what is the worst thing that could happen? Or what are the fears that come along with those successful outcomes? So it's just kind of this back and forth that I'm trying to wrap my head around, of the dichotomy of fear versus success and how that motivates us.
Yeah. And I think you brought up a good point, what's the worst that could happen? Because normally nothing is as bad as we envision in our heads. Everything I've pursued has never ended up poorly. The only time I've ever dealt with problem people was when I was charging small amounts of money for things. When I was charging small amounts of money for things and dealing with price hagglers, that's the only time I've ever had issues with people being upset with me or anything like that. At higher price points, people are just more grateful for whatever reason. But I think a lot of people are scared that they're going to just expect more from them, when really just what you're doing is probably fine. So realigning your beliefs is important. Identifying, what you're afraid of is important, and seeing how you can shift that and overcome that. And then also seeking support. This is why I love having my little community and having groups of people working together towards similar goals, because you can lean on each other, because everyone goes through these struggles in business. There's so much discomfort that you have to go through to become a successful business owner. You become powerful as hell after going through all of it. I mean, you become the best version of yourself, but it's very uncomfortable, and probably overcoming your fear of success is going to be really uncomfortable. So having support systems in place, a group, a community that you can hash this out with is super important. And the whole reason why I'm doing this podcast right now is to help my mastermind members who brought this up and are struggling with this. And just having that group is so great to overcome some of these fears and barriers that we set up for ourselves, and to help us identify that we're self-sabotaging.
Yeah, and it's so easy to just sit in your current situation, whether that's really uncomfortable or really comfortable, to just kind of keep the status quo. But having other folks, whether it's a coach or friends, family, a community, mastermind, whatever it is, to kind of get you asking different questions or seeing other sides of kind of what the next step is, or what the results of that next step could look like, I think is super important to just continue to grow.
Yeah. Or even just shocking you out of your thought loop. Because that's what I see all the time, is people get stuck in these thought loops because, they're just sitting in their offices and they're surrounded by people with regular jobs, and they get stuck in these thought loops. And sometimes it's just as easy as me coming in and being like, that's crazy. Why are you doing that to yourself? Do this instead. And then it's it shakes them loose, and they're like, oh yeah, why am I self-sabotaging? Why have I not done any work for a couple months? I have to learn what this is all about. This is a successful problem to solve. So if you set incremental goals and kind of like celebrate some of your achievements and successes that are smaller, that's supposed to help. I think part of it too is, I mean, we all get overwhelmed if we are just looking at the amount of work that we have to do to achieve our goals. So doing the baby steps where every day or every other day or once a week, you're just like, I'm going to watch this 15-minute video. I'm going to do this homework. I'm going to write this blog post, whatever it is. And then celebrating that achievement and realizing that success isn't so bad. Doing things and achieving things is actually really great. That helps to rewire your brain. And celebrating achievements is really huge. We kind of got off that train, but remember, like every week we were celebrating something.
Yeah.
Every week we were like popping a bottle of champagne. We're like going out to dinner. I'm like buying myself stuff, that I've always wanted. We've kind of got out of that habit, but like celebrating your successes is so huge because otherwise you don't really remember that they happened and you just see all the work ahead of you that's to be done. And it feels like an unconquerable mountain. But yeah, celebrating is important. And then embracing vulnerability, because I do think that's probably a big part of it. Being successful is vulnerable. You have to put yourself out there. You have to show your face on Instagram. You got to do the work, even though you're, a perfectionist and everything is not up to your impossible to achieve standards. And like, at some point, you just have to be like, I'm an imperfect person. I'm a B or C student. I'm a freaking weirdo. And people might look at me and think I'm crazy, but I'm going to do my thing. And I don't know if it's just age for me or something, but I have definitely stopped caring about what people think of me. And that's one of the best things I could have done for my business, because if I cared about whether people thought I was crazy or wrong or doing something dumb or whatever, like if I cared about what people thought, I would not be able to move forward. But yeah, embracing the fact that people are going to have opinions on you. You're going to have to share yourself with the world. I think that's a huge part in overcoming this and being okay with that. Being okay with yourself and saying like that you're worth all of this. Your worth is infinite, actually. You don't have to be productive to be worthy. You don't have to be a millionaire to be worthy. Like, your worth is infinite, but you get to decide what success looks like for you. And then freaking go after it, even if it's in baby steps and you have to pop a bottle of champagne every week to celebrate your little wins. It's worth getting over this hump and this limiting belief that success is going to be this really scary thing. It's going to be the best thing you've ever done, right? I mean, you're a successful videographer now.
Yeah.
I keep pushing Todd to coach more and you're very resistant to it. Do you think there's like a fear of expectations there and like visibility and vulnerability a little bit?
Yeah. And kind of the whole imposter thing of only been doing this, 3 years, but there are people that have been doing it less. So there's something I can teach them. Yeah, I think that is part of it. I think more of kind of my hesitation on it is just kind of like we talk about, like it doesn't really give me a ton of energy, or kind of the actual like talking with people is fun and I enjoy that part, but like kind of the back end work and like building lessons or like figuring out what I'm going to teach is where I kind of struggle, because yeah, that kind of seems like a slog and I don't like have my full heart in it.
Yeah. Are you having any fear of success with other things as you're kind of like pivoting into more of a supportive role for my coaching business?
Yeah, I know we talk, or we've mentioned before, and we talk often, just the two of us, about kind of me not dreaming big enough or thinking big enough. So I guess in a way that's kind of a fear of success, of like, I don't think of like what it could be or how big it could be or how powerful and impactful the work that we do is. So I guess in that sense, yeah, I have a fear of success because I haven't really thought it through or put myself in that thought or that mind frame of the good that it's doing and what the success will look like.
Yeah, I think my fear of success lately has been because I've kept the elopement photographer mastermind pretty small. And so I only let in maybe 5 people a month. And I could do more, but I just haven't pursued that. I could do it. And same with my other program, Stoked to Coach. Like, I haven't promoted it that much over the past few months. And so the program numbers are dwindling a little bit. And today I'm like, screw it. I'm going to do a little mini launch for it, get some more people enrolled. Like, what am I waiting for? I'm like procrastinating.
And are you procrastinating because of you're afraid of how big or how successful it could be, or other reasons?
I feel like I am, from going through this podcast. I'm afraid that it's going to be like more work, more expectations. It gets overwhelming sometimes with being, I'm not directly responsible for people getting results on everything, but I'm obsessed with people getting results. And I worry all the time that people won't get results. I know at this point, like I am confident at this point with the Elopement Photographer Mastermind that people will get results. There have been a couple people in Stoked to Coach who have launched things to very small audiences and didn't get people to sign up. And that makes me nervous because I want them to get people to sign up. But we all know it's because their email list is small. It's just a troubleshooting thing. We got to fix it. They figured out how to launch and they were okay that people didn't join. But at the same time, like I want people to get a return on investment. And people have. Other people have made tens of thousands of dollars from Stoked to Coach. So I know it's worth it, but there's something holding me back from it. I just worry. I worry when people don't get their return on investment, even when I know and they know exactly what they need to do to change it. So that's me being vulnerable, guys. And I'm going to push that aside because I know like Stoked to Coach is another life-changing program. And I think I'm going to do another podcast on why I'm so obsessed with helping people do coaching, because it's a great program. Like, why am I afraid of it being successful? That's just silly of me. So yeah, if you're listening and you are realizing that you are procrastinating, you're self-sabotaging, you're distracting yourself with other little bitty tasks, and you're not accomplishing the things that you know you need to accomplish to hit those numbers and find success in your business, if you have self-doubt, if you have imposter syndrome, if you are worried about expectations and vulnerability and visibility and getting out of your comfort zone, you need to work through that. You need to dive into it, write it down, figure out what you're feeling, what you're afraid of, switch your mindset about it. If there are actions you need to take in order to feel better, take those actions. If it's literally just like convincing your brain that you're worth it, start with those affirmations, but you deserve all the success in the world. And I hope you feel heard in this podcast and that you have some actionable tips you can take to work through your fear of success. And I can't wait to talk to you guys next week. Thanks so much for joining us on this episode of Stoked with Megan McPhail. If you enjoyed the show and you'd like to help support the podcast, please subscribe, leave a review, and tell a friend. If you're looking for more inspiring content, check us out on Instagram at Stoked with Megan McPhail. And to learn more about my business coaching and how I can personally help you quit your 9-to-5, visit my website at meganmcphail.com. I hope this leaves you feeling stoked. See you next week.